What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of No Time to Explain. Will the Brooklyn Nets win an NBA championship this year? Highly unlikely, in my opinion. And we're going to get into that right now. So we already know once this team was first put together, like when Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant first got to this team, they were the first two guys on this team. Everybody kind of thought, all right, like this team is poised for a Larry O'Brien trophy. Like they're poised for a championship trophy, right? Except if you were a supporter of another team who was also in contention. Then they went and added James Harden. And then a lot of people were like, oh yeah, it's a no-brainer. They're going to get it. Me, technically, I never was so much bought in on that trio because they're all ISO ball guys, right? And I don't want to talk about that too much because obviously they're not together anymore, but they're all ISO ball guys. And the James Harden that they were getting, it wasn't the James Harden that we were accustomed to seeing in Houston when he dominated the game and he was like one of the best scorers in the NBA. And people even started to ask, is he the best scorer we've ever seen? Which is crazy. He's probably one of the most skillful scorers, but as we know, skill don't always win championships, as he has yet to win one. But past that point, right, we saw a lot of things happen this offseason with Kevin Durant requesting a trade. I think Kyrie Irving might have requested a trade, or maybe they just couldn't figure out what they were going to do with his contract. But Kevin Durant was unhappy this offseason. We don't know really what made him unhappy. Everybody's kind of thinking it was due to Kyrie Irving's lack of availability, and his buy-in on the team, right? Kevin Durant wanted out, and he still has like 4 years on his contract, which is surprising to see. We usually don't see superstars ask for trades that quickly. However, he didn't get traded due to the absurd asking price that the Nets were asking for a 34-year-old injury-prone star, right? So with that being said, he also stated he didn't want Steve Nash as a coach. The Brooklyn Nets, apparently they cleared that up. I don't think they really have cleared that up. I think a lot of those frustrations and issues that Kevin Durant still had are there because recently we just got a report that he stated he was frustrated with how the preseason was going. And it hasn't been pretty for the Brooklyn Nets as of recent, right? So what would be the things that are stopping this team from winning an NBA championship this year? The first thing that I want to point out is Ben Simmons has taken the last year off. He hasn't played basketball since the Atlanta Hawks series, right? And since then, my expectations, and I'm sure everybody else's expectations, were that Ben Simmons will work on some of his weaknesses in his game. We expected Ben Simmons to get a jump shot. We expected Ben Simmons to get more aggressive. That hasn't happened. There was a preseason game where he only shot 5 shots. And then recently at the Brooklyn Bridge, we just seen this dude airball a 15-foot jump shot. Like it wasn't even close. Like his jump shot does not look good at all. He probably needs to do some work with a shooting coach and get that fixed. And the crazy thing is like Andre Drummond got a 3-pointer before Ben Simmons. Like Andre Drummond, is preseason. I get it. Nobody was covering the guy, but his jump shot looks good. It's a difference. Ben Simmons' jump shot doesn't look good. He doesn't look confident shooting it. Andre Drummond's jump shot looks fluid and he looks confident shooting it, right? And we just don't know what Ben Simmons we're going to get. And while the Brooklyn Nets may not necessarily rely on his scoring because they have, again, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, those guys can take care of the scoring for you, and you got a lot of bench guys that can help with scoring as well. Now, they'll primarily rely on his defense and his playmaking, which is his 2 greatest strengths. But with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving being injury prone, there's a possibility that Ben is going to be called on a lot more to put some points on the board, right? And if he hasn't worked on his game, that's not going to happen. As we saw in my last video where we talked about, Giannis and how he's improved juxtaposed to Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is regressing. His numbers were down on the last full season that he played. Like all his numbers are down. So I just don't know. I don't see it happening with Ben Simmons. Secondly, Kyrie Irving, we don't know what this dude's availability is like. He's got 1 year left in his contract. This is the last year. He opted into his contract this year because the Brooklyn Nets weren't going to give him a long-term extension, rightfully so, because he's just been blowing off the team basically. But this dude, you know, you never know if something happens in the world where he feels like, you know, he has a moral obligation to protest it or support it. We may not see Kyrie Irving play. As weird as that sounds, when you're paying a guy $28-30 million a year, you expect to see this guy every single tip off, especially if you're a fan, especially if you're an owner of the team, especially if you're a teammate of this guy. You want to see Kyrie Irving play. Kyrie Irving is way too talented not to be on the court. And he means a lot to this team. He needs to be on this court. They play way better with this guy on the court. And then the third thing that I really want to mention is like Steve Nash. I don't think he has the locker room bought in. We heard Kevin Durant, which we would assume would be the leader of this team, voice his frustrations with Steve Nash. Who's to say that Kevin Durant wasn't speaking on behalf of the team, right? Steve Nash sometimes looks like he's just out there watching the game like we are. He has not shown the ability to make some adjustments that he needs to make in the playoffs. And the Nets, as talented as they were, like they were only like what, a 7th seed last year? I have to go back and look. And then they got absolutely annihilated by the Boston Celtics last year as well. So his coaching is still in question. Like, is he going to be able to be a leader in the locker room? Is he going to be able to win over that locker room? Because right now it's not there. And the biggest thing is like, you can see that this team does not have chemistry. One thing about NBA championship teams is you can tell there's something special about those rosters. There's something special about the way that they play. Their fluidity on the court, their chemistry, their defense, the way that they make plays, the way that they celebrate. There's so many levels to it, right? And I'm not seeing that with the Brooklyn Nets right now. Now, it's preseason, right? Who's to say that they won't develop that chemistry and they won't learn how to play together as the season goes on? That's likely a possibility. That's what happens with most teams, right? They kind of, they have some struggles, like the Boston Celtics. We saw them last year struggle for the first quarter of the season last year. I think they were like playing 500 basketball, but they were able to put it together and make a championship run. That could be very well a possibility for the Brooklyn Nets, considering that the roster that they have. But they're going to struggle on defense. Ben Simmons definitely helps out when it comes to the defensive end. Like, they need that for sure. But I think they probably need another defensive anchor on that team as well if they're going to be able to win. Because right now I have the same 3 teams coming out the East. It's either going to be the Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia 76ers, or the Miami Heat. And with the 76ers getting PJ Tucker recently, I think everybody's underlooking that offseason move. That is an incredible pickup for that team, because he's going to be really good for that team. And that's just going to make things even more difficult with Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets. But let me know in the comments, guys. Do you think that the Brooklyn Nets will put it together and they'll be able to contend for a title this year? Again, I think it's unlikely considering everything and the walls that they have up right now. They're going to have to knock those down. But go ahead. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think? Like, comment, and subscribe. This has been another episode of No Time to Explain.